It is 2016. Can you believe that? That is crazy. I'm getting to that age in my life where 2016 feels like we're living in the future. You know, like when you used to watch movies as a kid and they'd talk about the future. I mean, Back to the Future, when they went to the future, it wasn't much past the year we're in now. It's just a wild thought. With every new year comes this ritual that we call resolutions. And what's amazing is that with every new year and that long list of resolutions, we start off pretty good, but things quickly derail. Have you noticed that? We always start off pretty smooth, and then we get a little further into the year, and things just seem to fall apart, right? It's kind of become a joke, hasn't it? I'm going to start a diet on January 1st. January 5th, I'm off the diet. It happens all of the time. I'm not going to spend so much money this year. January 8th, I bought tickets to the Super Bowl, right? It happens all of the time. We start off pretty good, but it inevitably falls apart because things come up along the way. There's always a bump in the road, right? And we never anticipate the bumps when we're writing the resolutions because we can't see what's around the corner. These things just kind of come up. You know, family emergencies happen. The furnace breaks. There's a party with your favorite meal. There's always something that throws us off course and messes us up. And I think we blame the bumps in the road a little too often, if I'm being honest. I think we often play the victim card. Well, all of this happened to me, and because all of this happened to me, that's why I'm not doing these things anymore. But I want to challenge us this morning to think about that differently, because I don't know that it's so much about the bumps in the road and the curves in the road and all that as it is about the way we start. So this morning, I want to introduce you to what I'm calling the lean principle. Now, don't go home and look this up, because I made it up. You won't find it anywhere. But I'm hoping it will be helpful to you. I'm hoping that it'll help you navigate 2016 maybe differently than you did 2015. And the way it's going to help you navigate is probably going to be different from what you would expect. In fact, if you sit through this whole talk, and I hope you do for the next few minutes, and you were to take the lean principle to work tomorrow, and you were sitting in the break room, and you start saying, hey, at church yesterday, we started talking about the lean principle, and here's how it works, they're going to look at you and go, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Because what we're about to talk about is utterly countercultural. It's very different from how most people think. We might say it's different from how the world thinks, or different from how society thinks. Because the lean principle is, I believe, authored by God, not by man. And I want to explain that to you. But first, let's talk about New Year's resolutions. The internet is full of all kinds of tools to help you make New Year's resolutions. Like Facebook, not long ago, had this thing up that you could click on, and you put in your name, and then it tells you what your word of the year is. Have you done this? A lot of us do this now. We come up with a word of the year, and I don't know how they determine that word based on your name, but it's very interesting, some of the things that come out. So we'll either write a word, or we'll sit down with a pad of paper and a pen, and we'll just start writing out New Year's resolutions. And we'll say things like, well, this year, I want to lose weight. A lot of us say that. I said that. We want to lose weight. We want to get healthier. We want to eat right, so on and so forth. Or, you know what? This year, I want to make more money. Whatever that takes. I'm going to go get another job or a new job or create a business or something like that. Or, you know, in the same vein with money, you say, this year, I am going to get out of debt. I'm going to pay off my credit cards, my student loans. We're going to get ahead on the mortgage. We're going to do all of that Dave Ramsey kind of stuff. We're going to make them proud this year, right? Or, you know what? I'm going to call my parents more often this year. My mom was here for first service. She said that was her favorite one. You know, or we're going to quit smoking. Maybe this year, maybe 2016 is the year that we're going to stop smoking. Or we're going to spend more time with our kids, right? And we do all kinds of things. And I don't know what yours are. And if we had all day, we would have roving mics and we could go all around the room and you could share yours. And we would just, one after the other, put these resolutions up. Now, some of us have very long lists. And if you have a place that you put sticky notes with resolutions like this in your house, you probably have wallpapered your house. Others of us come up with a few. But nonetheless, we all have these ideas about what would make 2016 better than 2015. That's the heartbeat of resolutions, right? If I behave in this way, if I do these things, think this way, talk this way, go these places, then this year is going to be better than last year. That's the baseline of every resolution. And that's how we start off. We start off with this cloud of ideas. But there's these two verses in Scripture that mess the whole idea up, I think. And if we read them closely, I think we see the best way to think about how we start off each and every year. I want to introduce them to you. They're in the book of Proverbs, chapter 3. These are pretty popular, famous verses. You might have them on your refrigerator at home or something like that. These words were written by Solomon, and they are literally cram-packed with all kinds of application for you and I, especially on January 3rd, 2016. It reads like this: "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your paths straight." That couple of verses gets off to a pretty difficult start. Because Solomon says, trust in the Lord. A lot of us, if we were totally transparent, would say we have trust issues. It's difficult to trust someone. You add in the fact that you can't see or touch God, it becomes increasingly difficult. Even if you're a church person and you've been going to Sunday school and Awana and Upward and you just grew up doing all that stuff, if we were totally honest, we would be willing to admit it is not always easy to trust God, especially when things are not going according to the plan. When the bumps come up or the curves come fast, it's difficult to trust God. It makes me think about when I was in high school and you went on a retreat. You've maybe even done this as an adult with work. They take you out to these camps, right? And they stick you in these cabins that have these less than luscious bunks for you to sleep in. And you eat food that's less than as good as what mom makes at home. And you spend all this time with all of these people, and then they wake you up early one morning and they say, okay, everybody, we're going out to the woods for an adventure. And then they drop two words on you that just strike fear into everyone's heart: team building. And they take you out into the woods and they say, okay, we need a volunteer. And they get a volunteer and they bring them and they put them up on this tall platform. And they say, okay, friend, you're going to turn your back to all these people down here. And these people are going to huddle together and interlock their arms. And when we say go, you're going to cross your hands over your chest and you're just going to fall backwards, lock-kneed. And they're going to catch you. We call this the trust fall, right? I will never, ever do that. You want to know why? Because one time I Googled trust fall fails. Not pretty at all. Trusting is difficult. Blind trust is even more so. And then Solomon says, not only trust in the Lord, but lean not on your own understanding. And some of us read that and go, that's all I got, is my own understanding of the world and how it works. All some of us have or think we have is our history. I grew up in this neighborhood. This is how much money we had or didn't have. I went to this school. I hung out with these people. I had all of these sorts of things happen to me. That's my understanding of the world. Or I live in this kind of house now and I'm married to so-and-so and I have these many kids and I work at this job, and that's my understanding of the world. And Solomon says, don't lean on that. So not only does he challenge us to trust God, which is already difficult, he goes on to say, and don't lean on what you think you know. Submit to him. There's two ways to think of that. There's the submission that looks like a bended knee, which would be giving up control, handing over the reins to someone else. Most of us have a total phobia of that idea. It's why we fight with our spouses. It's why we get into debates in the break room about football and Star Wars and all of these other kinds of things, because we want control. We've talked about that several times over the last couple weeks. So submitting to someone else feels unnatural. The other way to look at it is like you would submit a project at work, or if you're in high school, middle school, college with us this morning, you submit your homework. And what's difficult about that situation is that you are then at the mercy of the teacher. You're at the mercy of your boss. You submit it to them, and it's open season for what they think about it. And they evaluate it, and they alter it, and hopefully you learn from it and do it differently next time. But that's a scary proposition. And I think we could look at this in both ways. Is one, we submit control to God, but two, we might start considering submitting our plan to him so that he can let us know what he thinks about it. And he might think differently than what you would hope for. But what Solomon is saying, and what we struggle with so much in what he's saying, is that leaning is easy. Think about it from a strictly physical standpoint. It is easier for me to stand up here all morning and lean on this table than stand on my own 2 feet, because I haven't met my resolution yet of losing weight. So standing here like this takes its toll on my body. It is a lot easier for me to lean on this table all morning. It's why you'll find people leaning up against walls. It's why your high school student slouches. Because it's easier for them to slide down and lean their shoulders on the back of their chair than sit up straight and engage their abs and their back and all of that kind of stuff. Leaning is easier. In the same way that it's easier to go with what we've always known. It's easier to go with our understanding of the world and what we think we know is true. That, I think what Solomon is saying, is easy. That's natural. But trusting is not only hard, it's scary. Just like the trust fall, or just like being in a completely dark room, dependent on someone else leading you around. That is scary. It's why I think Solomon sandwiches lean not on your own understanding with trust in the Lord and submit to him. I need to tell you twice because you're not going to want to do it. This isn't going to be comfortable or easy. And you can start to see the lean principle is deceiving because it's not about leaning, it's about not leaning. It's actually the opposite of the title, which I probably should have thought through before I named it that. But again, you'll remember the lean principle is not about, hey, you should lean on your own understanding. It's, no, you shouldn't lean. I read this and I go, okay, Solomon, this is easy for you to write. God inspired and all. It's easy to put down on paper, but I don't know that you ever had to live it because you're the king. And as I was reading about Solomon, I came across an interesting point in his life, just before or just when he was becoming king. And the parallels to like a new year are very interesting because he stands at the beginning of this new reign. And he has a very interesting conversation with God, and I'd love to show that to you. It's in 1 Kings chapter 3. 1 Kings chapter 3. Solomon is taking the throne. God gets a hold of him and puts this phrase out to him. Ask for whatever you want me to give you. Ask for whatever you want me to give to you. And that's what you'll get. And right away in this moment, Solomon is faced with the dilemma between leaning and trusting. Because leaning on his own understanding, if he's human like the rest of us, if God says, hey, write down what you need in order to be a successful king. Here's what I'm writing down. Lots of money. Because I need to be able to buy anything I need when I'm king. I will need a really big palace because I want it to be intimidating and I want everybody to know who's important around here. And I'm going to need a big army. And I'm going to need victory over my enemies. I'm going to need notoriety. And I'm going to come up with all of these things that I think, according to what I've learned about the world, make for a good king or a strong king. But Solomon, even though at this moment he's not known as the wisest man to ever live, exercises some wisdom and practices the lean principle and does the exact opposite from what culture might have told him to do. Jump down to verse 7. Solomon replies to God. He says, "Now, Lord my God, you have made your servant king in place of my father David." And listen to this. "But I am only a little child and do not know how to carry out my duties. Your servant is here among the people you have chosen, a great people, too numerous to count or number. So give your servant a discerning heart to govern your people and to distinguish between right and wrong. For who is able to govern this great people of yours?" So instead of Solomon leaning into his understanding, he trusts God with this simple request: God, please give me a discerning heart. This is the moment where Solomon says, all I need is wisdom. God, if you could just give me that, if you could give me discernment between right and wrong, wise and unwise, then I think I could be a king that honors you. This is probably not what I would have asked for, but it's what Solomon does. And you can see in the line of questions that he throws out there, like, God, I'm just a small child. Now, he was not a child, but he says, from ability to do what I'm being called to do standpoint, I'm a child. I don't know how to do this. And these are your people. And he's insinuating, who could govern your people better than you? Who could take care of this nation better than you? So God, please give me a discerning heart to know what you would want me to do. That is what he's asking for here. Help me to be just like you. Help me to be wise like you. Help me to talk like you and think like you and rule like you. Give me a discerning heart. Help me to be able to see where you are and where the world is and to choose you. That's wisdom. That's what he asks for. That's what he pushes for in this moment. And then an incredible response comes from God. One that I'm sure not even Solomon saw coming. Look at verse 10. The Lord was pleased that Solomon had asked for this. So God said to him, "Since you have asked for this, and not for a long life or wealth for yourself, nor have asked for the death of your enemies, but for discernment and in administering justice, I will do what you have asked. I will give you a wise and discerning heart, so that there will never have been anyone like you, nor will there ever be. Moreover, I'll give you what you have not asked for, both wealth and honor, so that in your lifetime you will have no equal among kings." Now, some people read this and they go, "Oh, awesome, I get it. I just got to go home and tell God I want a discerning heart, and like a genie in a bottle, he's going to give me everything that I wanted." That's not the lean principle. That's not what Solomon was getting after here. When he told God, "I just want a discerning heart," there was no ulterior motive. There was no, well, I think God's so gracious, he's going to give me what I didn't ask for. He didn't think that way at all. He just wanted a discerning heart. And it so pleased God that God says, "Okay, I'll make you the wisest person that's ever lived and some." It's an amazing interaction. And the heartbeat of it all is this idea that God wants you to trust him. And if you trust him, then he will take good care of you. Now, I know you've probably heard that 100,000 times. But do we get it? Do we believe it? Because every single year, come December 28, 29, 30, we sit down and we start mapping out the year. And we start telling God, so to speak, this is what I need to have happen this year in order for me to be successful in 2016. It's difficult for us to get to January 1 and go, I just trust God. But Solomon was able to make the distinction and the decision that honored God the most. And I think that's why he could write these words in Proverbs chapter 3. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. I speak from experience. And lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways, submit to him. And he will make your paths straight. Translation, he will take care of you and get you where you need to be, when you need to be there, because he knows better than you anyway. And I love that Solomon writes the words in Proverbs as he's living them out, as he's practicing it. And that idea that God will make our paths straight, that's the problem with resolutions, right? You can't see what's around the bend. You can't see what's going to happen in March or July or October. You can really only see what's going to happen in the next few minutes. In a lot of ways, what we try to do at the beginning of every year is navigate the highway system from a helicopter's standpoint. Have you ever looked at a highway from a helicopter's standpoint? That is overwhelming. That's just a knot of roads. And what's really scary to me is that on that knot of roads at any one time are thousands of cars traveling at 80 miles an hour, all hopped up on caffeine and angry about life. And we're trying to navigate our way through that. And that is difficult. That is scary. And who in their right mind would try to do it? Well, you and me every single year. Because that's the year ahead of us. And we try and figure it all out and have it all mapped out. Instead of just trusting. And here's what trusting looks like. And I think is a lot more easy. You follow one road sign at a time. Just one. Don't try and get the whole knot. Just take one thing at a time. This is why the geniuses that designed your map app or your GPS system in your car, they only give you one step at a time. You put in, okay, I want to get to the nearest Pizza Hut. They don't say, okay, turn left, then right, then left, then go straight, and don't stop or don't slow down. Just veer to the right and merge onto that. They don't give you all that at one time. They say, okay, travel for 1.1 miles and look for this exit. And once you take that exit, then that sweet voice comes back on and gives you the next one. And I think that's what trusting God is really all about. Understanding that God knows exactly where you need to be in your life. And he not only knows that, but he knows the best way for you to get there. And you know why? Because he drew the map. We talk about God having the map to our life a lot, as if God found it somewhere. He just stumbled upon that map and now he has possession of it. No, he's the author of it, which is profound to me. He not only knows where you got to go, how you got to get there, but he made the whole thing up in the first place. Somehow we have a hard time trusting that. But Solomon says, if you do, he'll make your paths straight. He'll get you where you got to go. And so I'm convinced, really, beyond the shadow of a doubt, of this principle, that clarity going forward comes from focus at the start. Clarity going forward comes from focus at the start. Focus is different than a shotgun approach. Focus is this idea of singular, razor sharp, eyes on the target kind of mentality. And I think that is what gives us clarity going forward. If we can get razor focused on God and trusting him, then the promise is he will make our paths straight. He'll bring you clarity as you go forward, not before you go forward. Trust him first, then he'll help you out as you move along. So this is what I've been grappling with, because every year I sit down, I'm like, I should probably write some resolutions, because that's what everybody does. And you know what's interesting? For the last 8 years, mine have all pretty much been the same. Spend less, eat less. That's about it. I don't do very well on them. But this year, I'm convinced of doing it differently because of what Solomon has said and what Solomon had lived. My idea this year is to start taking these resolutions off my grid and to start turning them over to God. This idea of trusting him with that thing that I'm convinced, my own understanding, would make me better. I'm going to trust him with my health. I'm going to trust him with my addictions. I'm going to trust him with my money. I'm going to trust him with my children. I'm going to trust him with my debt and with my parents and the rest of my family and all of these things that my human understanding and point of view tells me are important for this year. I'm just going to give them to God. And friends, this one thing is a lot easier to manage than this. And this kind of focus, maybe making that word your word for the year, might change everything. It might bring a renewed clarity to how you live your life. But here's what's interesting. I don't think that you go home and do this, it's going to take care of the rest of the year. I think it'll take care of today. Because you listen to this and you go, well, that sounds very childish. Just trust. Exactly. It's supposed to. Because Jesus told us to have the faith of a child. And I've been blessed with 4 children. And at no point in the last 2 weeks have my kids sat me down and go, now, Dad, we need to talk about our plan for 2016. Because here's all the things that I think I need to accomplish and have happened to me in this year in order to make it better than the year before. None of them have said that. They don't care. They just care about right now, today. Because they're young enough to still trust. And right now, their bucket may not be God, but it is me and Heidi. And they trust us. They trust us with school. They trust us with food. They trust us with electricity. They trust us with all this stuff. And if we just trust Mom and Dad, we get to enjoy life. And to me, that's clarity. And clarity going forward comes from focus at the start. Not easy. Absolutely scary. But I think this is the way we are meant to live every year. See what I did this morning, I hope, is give you your one resolution for 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 20. You don't have to write New Year's resolutions anymore. Just say, this year, I want to trust God more. I mean, what would it look like? I'm thinking about it. I know this isn't a pretty bucket, so I probably wouldn't get away with it. But what if you put a bucket in your kitchen? And every time a resolution idea comes up, or a worry comes up, or something that you are not content with comes up, if you wrote it on a little piece of paper and you just stuck it in that bucket, wouldn't it be fun in December to sit down with that bucket and look through all these things and go, I trusted God with my weight this year. And he helped me. And I trusted God with my money this year. And he helped me. And I trusted him with my family, and he helped me. He made my paths straight. Does that mean everything's going to be rosy going forward? No. It's not the promise. The promise is that God will carry you to the place he wants you to be, on the road that he wants you to go on. That's the promise. And to me, that's a better year. Trusting is a better year. So the lean principle is not about what are you going to lean on this year. It's about, are you willing to stop leaning on your own understanding and just trust and submit your plans and your hopes and dreams and the circumstances you're in now? Are you willing to just trust God simply? I think Solomon was absolutely wise. He was so wise that Dr. Seuss actually infused some of his characters with the wisdom of Solomon. The Lorax is the one who said a tree always falls where it leans. Be careful which way you lean. You see, I think that's the hard part. Every year we lean into our own understanding and what we think needs to happen, and every year that's where we fall. And every year that's where we struggle the most. And it's not because stuff came up along the way that threw us off. It's not because of curves that come up too fast or bumps that are too big. It's because we didn't start at the beginning of the year razor sharp focused on the thing or the one that we should have been. And so as you wrestle with this going home, this is what I want you to keep in the back of your mind, that this is simpler than this. And that one of the ways you can simplify your life, forget what Pinterest tells you. I know they tell you clean out your closet and rearrange your front room and redecorate and all that stuff. The way to simplify your life is to trust God more. That's it. The best way to simplify your life, and I think have less stress and less anxiety and more joy, is to trust God. I say it over and over again. The greatest gift that God's ever given me is my wife. The second best gift that God has ever given me is my children. Because the combination of those two have taught me more about God and how I'm supposed to live my life with Him than any other place in all my life. More than seminary, more than a book, more than any of it. Because in my kids and in Heidi, I see this profound trust. And I hear God whispering, that's who you are supposed to be. Trust me. Don't lean on your own understanding. Don't lean on what makes sense to you. Don't lean on what culture tells you you need in order to be happy. Just trust me. That will make for a very different year. Will you pray with me? God, there are people in this room right now that in the year 2016 are going to face the death of a loved one. There are people in this room right now, Lord, that in 2016 are going to lose their job, or are going to get sick, are going to have to move, or are going to face financial struggle. And Lord, there are those of us in this room who want to believe that we can plan enough ahead to prevent it all. But God, we cannot see what's coming. You can. And so, Lord, what's so counter-cultural and counterintuitive about the lean principle is that not trying to control and manipulate is actually less stressful. Trusting you gives us enough focus to have clarity going forward each and every day. So my prayer for my friends in this room is that 2016 would be a year where we have trusted you more with more than ever before. Help us to be that kind of people, Solomon kind of people. In Jesus' name.